left is Jim Brashears. We're both members of the Paradise Citizens Alliance and will be conducting this interview. Welcome to our Paradise Citizens Alliance interviews of candidates running for local, nonpartisan, elective offices serving our greater Paradise community. These interviews are meant for you, the voters, to learn more about the candidates, their positions on the issues, and to encourage you to vote on November the 8th. By voting, you're exercising one of your greatest rights and privileges as a citizen in our democracy. All these interviews will be posted on our website at paradiseca.org for you, the voter, to access online and view from October the 8th right up to the election on November the 8th. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ken Hunt, who is a current member of the Paradise Irrigation District's Board of Directors. Ken, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation.
Ken, we're going to lead off and just you tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, my background, that's like an interview. I was in the air freight industry for 15 years, air cargo with a giant in the industry. Then went to work for the largest United States-owned international air freight forwarder. Ultimately, I found myself bouncing around between Boston, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Los Angeles. And after surviving the two earthquakes, the big Loma Prieta quake in San Francisco, Oakland area, and then the one down in Los Angeles, the Northridge quake, my wife said, "You've got to get me out of earthquake country." So after air freight career, we moved up to Paradise. That's what got us here in 1996. And really, it was the type of community we were looking in. We still had our youngest daughter in the home, and moved it up here. And we successfully ran this coffee shop business for 13 years. My wife became ill, and we sold the coffee shop. But at the end of it, I'm telling you, I could only wash tables and smile at customers for so long. And besides, I was kind of the grumpy guy. My wife was the charisma. I decided I needed to get back into something more financially orientated. So my sister at the time talked me into joining her little organization. And I got my real estate license and began as a loan officer for banking and brokering out mortgages for home loans. And I did that for the last couple of years, actually in the coffee shop's location. But it was very nice because it got me into more of a mental exercise and got me back to doing things that I used to be doing. And I found out that I really do love working with the people because I have a lot of first-time home buyers that need help and they need advice. Some of them I have to counsel for 1 or 2 years before they get in a position where they can successfully purchase a home. So that's what got me up to Paradise and why I was there.
Very good. Thank you, Ken.
Well, so why did you decide to run for re-election?
Oh, well, this is a heavy hitter question right away. Because actually, given the unfriendly atmosphere and the turmoil in the Paradise Irrigation District for the last 4 years, I was seriously considering not running. If I don't really enjoy it and if I don't have fun, I'm thinking maybe I just shouldn't put myself through this. But the Paradise Irrigation District is endangered. It's under attack right now. It's under attack by a sitting board member and a cadre of, I will call them fanatics, who are dealing with emotion, a bunch of angry people, and they're going to hurt the district. If they change the makeup of the board to where it becomes a 3-2 board in the other way than it is now, actually it's not a 3-2 board any longer, but when Doug Flesher was here it was. And, but the district is really at a crossroads. The precipitous move to go back on the direction that we're taking now will cause the Paradise Irrigation District to run out of money in the next year. In 12 months, not even the next year. That is, if they roll back the rate increase, which is what the proponents of the recall are asking to do. They're promising the public that that's what they're going to do. We're going to roll back the rates. We're going to solve this NPDES permit problem by putting in a $2 or $3 million wetlands on a 20-degree slope of land without taking out all the trees and making it look like Vietnam with terraces. An interesting wetland concept, I will have to say. But the Director Kellogg has the public, or many of the public, sold on that idea, because then they only have to spend $3 million, according to Director Kellogg, rather than the $16 million that we know we have to spend under the tried and true process water recycling program that we're currently under. And we've already exceeded the duration of our NPDES permit. If this is not fixed, if we don't continue on, the district will begin getting fined up to a maximum of $10,000 a day. This is starting January 1st, 2018. So, why am I running for re-election? It's to save the district from that type of a crisis coming up. Because at the end of the bankruptcy, if they're successful and we finally go cycle around and we're unable to pay our bills, the state of California will step in. They will put us in receivership. They'll get some manager to run it for a period of time until they figure out what to do. Well, it's not too hard to determine what the state of California is going to say. Much like, and I don't know how many years it was ago, but maybe 20 years or 15 years ago, the Lime Saddle Water District was run into the ground. I understand. I was not around. Bob Fortino bought it for $1. He's regulated by the PUC, Public Utilities Commission here in California. And it is a cost plus regulatory agency. So all the owner of a private water company has to do is say, here's my cost. I don't have to show the public, I don't have to show anybody that I've tried to control cost. Here are my costs, give me my 8%. That's where the Paradise Irrigation District is headed, to be purchased by Bob Fortino or somebody like him or Cal Water. But we aren't going to last that long.
Well, Ken, this leads into that. This perhaps is very much what you're going to be saying in terms of this next question. What do you see as the greatest challenges facing the PID both now and in the future? And I think you probably have touched on some of that already, but go ahead and elaborate further.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can without beating this dead horse, just continuing going on. The largest single challenge, of course, is getting us away from this NPDES permit. I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, but it stands for National Pollution Discharge Elimination. I don't know what the S is for, Society or something. But listen to the title of that. It's national and it's elimination. It's not reduction of the things that we're dropping back into a U.S. waterway. It's elimination. So 5 years ago, we're discussing this. What are we going to do? Are we going to continue on? We got more onerous levels assigned. We had to reduce the level of this aluminum we're returning to the waterway, and maybe some other items. So we thought that in the future, we cannot control what the national government is going to do. And it certainly appears like they're going to keep squeezing us down, down, down to where we're not returning any polluted water back into a U.S. waterway. Well, if that's what the design of the agency is, then let's get on board. Let's not spend a lot of money now enhancing our ability to clean the water and drop it back into a U.S. waterway. What can we do to get away from that? And we looked around at other successful districts who have done these things. And we have come up with this solution, and the solution is the process water recycling. So basically, just to make it real fast, is we clean water for people to drink. Down the pipes it goes. Now we need to backwash our filters. So we take in 1 million gallons of fresh water out of the lake, and we backwash our filters, and it stirs up all this sludgy stuff, and it's millions of gallons, and then we pipe it up to settling ponds and let it settle, and then ultimately, when it settles enough, we run that water back down into the lake. What doesn't evaporate. And that's the way we do it now. But we can't continue doing that. We now have a system where we are moving toward completing this system, where we will be able to take this water, put it into a vast, huge storage tank, do a mechanical dewaterization. So we're going to squeegee out the dirt.
Okay.
The mud and the twigs and the frogs and whatever else is in there. And we're going to haul that away, and we're going to be left with water at that point that is good enough for us to recycle back into our drinking water in a 90-10 ratio. So we take 90% of water from the dams, from the reservoirs, 10% of water from this big storage tank after we've cleaned it to that point. So we will never be discharging again. Then we're out of that permit. And we control our own destiny with this clean water. And it adds, I think the number was 600 or 700 acre feet of water to our usable water a year. So that is the primary goal. We have I think it's called a B Reservoir. Most people don't even know where this is. I had a hard time finding it. It's up off of Skyway as it goes up north of Wagstaff, and before you get to where it comes into Clark, we've got this huge 4 or 5 million gallon reservoir up there, which is concrete in the earth, halfway in the earth, halfway out, and it has got a plastic dome, rubber dome. Well, the rubber dome was good for maybe 10 or 15 years, I think was the lifespan when they put that on there. But why they didn't just, the board didn't just say, we're in the water business for 100 years, and we got another 100 to go. Why take the cheaper way to fix that on something that will only last for 10 or 15 years, and then we're going to have to decommission it and build a new tank? So that's what we're looking at now. We can go the cheap way and make the next board of directors in 10 or 15 years address that issue by just putting on, we'll let it go for another 4 or 5 years until it is no longer safe, and then we'll replace the top. I'm not going to vote for that because this water district's been around here 100 years. We just celebrated the anniversary. And this water district will be here another 100 years, or some extension of it. It might not be Paradise's water district any longer, but we need long-term solutions. That's one of the reasons I'm staying around. Aside from the B Reservoir needing to be repaired, redesigned, retrofitted, we need to finally act on another big project, which is a way to get water to our customers without using the 48-inch main that now goes from the dam kind of around the hillside, and actually it goes into the B Reservoir. And then we pump water back uphill to those people uphill from that. And then the A zone, which is my district, by the way. And but what are we going to do if there should be another one of these little earthquakes that happens up here occasionally, and it break that 48-inch water line? We are out of water. We are out of water for the entire district. So we need to have another way to get water from that 48-inch line going around the hill up to the top and over and back down. So we have an alternative method of getting water in that will keep things going until we get that 48-inch line repaired. And we're operating without that security right now. We talk about it. We've been talking about it since I came to the board 11 years ago. But we've never had any money to do anything with it. Well, I think the Proposition 218 and the way that we now have to go to the public and say that we've got to do this is going to change the dynamics of the board. It already has. Now, I'm hoping that it changes the dynamics of the board. Now, instead of having directors make decisions to not raise rates, only because this is a bad time to raise rates. The economy is tough. Let's take it easy on our public. Maybe in 1 or 2 years, things will be better. We have gone through this 1, 2, 3 year thing here without raising rates. And it's disastrous because you take a rubber band and you stretch it out. When you finally let go of that end, it's going to hurt. And that's what happens when you don't continue to raise rates as your expenses go up. I'm not saying you raise rates just because you can. But 218, the proposition that we have to live and die by, has basically forced us into doing a cost analysis every year. So every year we're going to be looking at a 218 process. And if it says, hey, here's your cost, it's that high, and here's your income, it's only that high, we have a problem. And we need to take care of it right now. Now, on the other hand, should we go ahead and spend $16 million and fix this issue we have now?
It was on the recycling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I'm going to get back to rates. We have to fund that. Well, we looked in our pockets, and our reserves are gone. I'm digressing. When I first got to the board, they had maybe about $3 million in reserves. Then we borrowed some money for a project, so it looked to a lot of people like it went up to $8 million in reserves or $9 million. It didn't. That's where we parked the borrowed funds until we spent it over a 2-year period of time for the project. But you had Director Doug Flesher and Director Bill Kellogg saying that we're spending our reserves. This money was borrowed to spend. It wasn't ours. And the public just latched onto that. Okay. But anyhow, so we will go back to the public when we spend that $16 million and maybe get the B Reservoir fixed in this circumvention for the 48-inch pipeline. When we get those fixed and we say, okay, well, geez, we're paying off this $16 million loan. Much of the money here we have was to finance that loan. Now, really, we don't have anything to do with that money except put it in and build up reserves. And we will. We'll build up reserves. We have a program now. It's coming into the meeting in October. And I imagine the public will be there and forced to listen to that. But we're going to build up some decent reserves, and then we're going to look at this and we're going to say, all right, then we can reduce our rates. Right now, it's our attorney's position that we can reduce our rates for the public without going through a Proposition 218 procedure, but that still yet needs to be tested and tried and true. But that's our intent. Okay. If we don't need to collect the money, we're not going to. But when we need to collect the money to pay bills, you collect it, you pay your bills, and you move on.
Okay. I think you've also
answered
a couple of other questions. I'm just going to throw out, maybe you could add to that anything else. It said, what changes or improvements, if any, would you like to see implemented at the Paris Irrigation District? And you gave an example would be the main that you just mentioned, in the B Reservoir.
I can add to that. There's something that's a long-term goal, and that is to get a drought mitigation plan in place. We've looked at this and have been talking about this for about 8 or 9 years or 7 or 8 years. One of the plans is, and we're still under negotiations, we're talking to PG&E about taking water out of the headwater there where they divert water down on the South Feather River or whatever, Middle Feather River or something, I don't know what it is. Just over on the other side of West Branch. That's 1,000 feet straight up that we'd have to pump that water. But the only time, if we come to an agreement with them, we build it. We could build that so that we can pump that expensive water up, and the only time we'd pump it up is under duress when it's drought. It's not meant for growth. It's not to do anything except just cover for drought. But when you got a mud puddle and you've got water down there that's flowing by and all you have to do is pay the electric bill to pump it up, then you do that. Aside from that, we've looked at other options. We've looked at options of maybe drilling a well down in the flat. It lands into the Tuscan Aquifer, which is a really hot issue right now, and pumping it all the way up Neal Road. We're also talking to and looking at a plan with Chico with Cal Water about building a pipeline, moving fresh water down there, and let them use it from us in times of excess so they can recharge their aquifer. And then when a drought comes along, we pay the expensive bill, we pump that up the hill, and we buy the water back out of the aquifer. That's something, you know, I don't know which way we're going to go. The board doesn't know which way we're going to go, but we've got to keep looking at all different types of options when we get into a 4-year drought again, or let's say we get into a 10-year drought. Then
it raises the interesting proposition that we'd have with a sewer as the option. We'd have one pipeline going down the hill with the effluent and one coming back with the water. So that's a good trade-off for Paradise.
Different pipelines.
That's definitely a good trade-off. How would you assess, in fact, we've talked a little bit about this, Ken, already. How would you assess PID's water supply and conservation efforts to date? You
know, I can be cranky with the public because of what I've seen and how angry many of the people were. And it was a lot of people. I don't believe it was anywhere near the majority of the people, but it was a lot of people that were angry. And I got off track. I need the question again.
No, that's okay. How would you assess the PID's water supply and conservation efforts to date?
Okay, but what I do have to say good about the public, oh my gosh, when the government gave us these onerous regulations, and then because of the size of the lots in Paradise and bigger lots, but you know, they compare us to these little 5,000 square foot lots. And the amount of water those people use to the ones up here with 40 or 50,000 square foot lots, or 18,000 or 15,000, and so they said we were poorly managing our water, so you're going to have to cut back 35%. And what did the people of Paradise do? It's just amazing. I mean, we went to a lot of effort to talk to it, to publicize it, to encourage that to happen. The money we spent on the automated meter readings went a long way to saving this water, but the public really came through. And that's one of the reasons why they were so angry when we then, right after they save all this and sacrifice and lost their yards and lost their trees. We hope they didn't lose trees, but then they're kind of like blaming the management at PID for the drought and say, well, you're punishing us for doing what you asked us to do. Well, it kind of wasn't us that asked you to do that. It was a mandate from the state of California. You did it. You did it so good, you cost us $1 million in income for not selling the water. Well, our costs are almost fixed. We got to keep the same amount of people to repair the broken pipes and to do service calls and to clean the water and to get it pumped and to replace pipe. So when you take $1 million out of our income, it hurts. because we don't have an extra $1 million that we just had floating in every year, or it'd be in a bank account somewhere. But we have, the people of Paradise have done just a great job. As you know, we got up, we filled the reservoirs because they weren't depleted all the way down, and we spilled. And the saving of the water, the conservation continues. You know, we even pretty drastically cut back our budgeting amount for this year, you know, 16 and 17. And the folks in Paradise, they're still pinching that penny. They've kind of learned a lesson and say, we're going to keep it down here. Well, we thought it might rebound a little bit, but so far it hasn't hardly rebounded any. Yeah. Which means that then we're already $50,000 behind the projected water revenue income for July, August. Yeah, just July and August. We haven't closed September yet.
Well, that's good.
But Paradise Public, they're shining examples of what a community can do when they just say, you know, we're going to suffer, we're going to let our flowers die, our grass die, but we're going to take care of the people.
Yeah.
So the board recently decided not to make changes to the divisions because of the survey of customers. It was pretty much evenly divided. What's your take on the division lines or not? Well,
I certainly have an opinion about it. I'm the guy who's been bringing this up for the last 2 years or maybe more. Because it's funny, and I don't think the public still understands, but maybe they'll understand for the people who watch this clip. People think that only the residents who live in Division 1 are going to decide whether I'm reelected or not in Division 1. And that is not what happens. The requirement is a residency in Division 1. So you've got to live in that spot to be able to run for that spot. But the entire population of all 5 divisions is what elects the directors. So I thought, we hardly have anybody coming up knocking on the door. Maybe the divisions have outlasted their use. So perhaps, I brought it up 2 or 3 years ago, perhaps if we would open it up to let somebody live anywhere, just that when 2 positions come up, okay, those 2, like the town council, those 2 positions are running. In alternate 2-year chunks, then the next 3 people come up 2 years later, and wherever a person could live, you know, they could say, yes, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring, and I'm going to run against those 3 people who are there. Well, how do you get elected against those 3? It's the 3 largest vote getters, just like the town council. And I thought, this is so much like what we already do. It can't be that drastic. But we have some board members who think that it might be hard for them to get reelected if they just had to run against anybody. And you know, that's the sorriest thing about the board, is when people put their political agenda before the needs of the people. Now, I could just be lying here. I could make this up for a good sound bite or something, but I believe it. I think that if we got rid of the residency requirement, then people who retire here, wherever you live, as long as you live within our boundary, our designated service zone, let them run for a seat on the board, and let the people then decide who are the 2 people we want on the board this time and who are the 3 people we want on the board next time. So that was my stirring up the pot on getting the division boundaries, residency requirements taken down.
Now, you may have touched on this a little also, Ken, in your previous answers, but what's your opinion of the special vote by mail recall election of PID directors Larry Duncan and Sepp Carolla, scheduled for January 24th?
You know, I have an opinion about everything, just about.
I think we've gotten that impression. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've also been told I like to talk, so I hope I'm not going to take too much time here.
That's okay.
But I will tell you that I pushed for doing the election by mail. And the reason I did it is because, number one, 60% of the population in Paradise already votes by mail. And for one issue coming up onto an election, where if you had to go out to the polling place on a cold, dreary, icy, rainy January evening, January 24th, I think is what we selected.
Right.
I think it would keep people at home in droves. I think that they might say this, just one issue, who is doing this? Why did they do that? But on the other hand, if we could get 100% of the people to vote by mail, if 100% of them would come back, the recall would die in a landslide. That's, of course, in my opinion. And maybe it's my wish. Certainly it is, because I'm encouraging everybody I talk to not to vote no on the recall. But that's what I think about the date. I think it will give more members of the public the ability to vote. And we're going to be encouraging them to get out. Needless to say, Paradise Irrigation District cannot and will not put in a political stance one way or the other.
Right.
But we are going to say, this is your water district, you vote for what you want. And that reaches everyone. The people who want the change, maybe the people who won't.
Very good.
Well, Ken, now's your opportunity to directly address the voters on why they should support you on November 8th.
Oh, I think that I may have been talking to the voters all along in this. I'm passionate about what I think is right for the district. And I don't come about what I think is right for the district with lack of training, with lack of study. I am the example on the board of who does all of their homework, of who reads the entire 180-page board meeting pamphlet that we get almost every time. I'm the one who over the last 11 years has gone out to training seminars to see what a board member should do and what they should absolutely never do. And what they should never do is try to take over the general manager's job. They should not micromanage. They should establish policy, rules, procedures. If you don't like a rule or procedure, we're the board. We can change it. That's what a board does. And that's what I do. And I will never make a political decision while I'm on the board. The decisions I make come from my research, my questions of staff, and my existing knowledge, of course. But if I don't know something, I'm not afraid to ask. I go in and I talk to the staff, I talk to the general manager, the finance guy, the water treatment person. And I have the best interest of people for the people in Paradise to stop this revolt, to not let the PID go bankrupt, to save this water company for the people of Paradise and let it prosper. Rates are going to go up, and rates may go down, but they're not going to be in excess of what it costs to produce the water and build up some decent reserves.
Ken, thank you so much for coming today. Appreciate that.
All right.
Appreciate you coming down and talking to us.